So we're joined on the sofa now by Ken from SilverCloud and Chris from Microsoft Research.
Welcome.
Both.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we can start with you, Ken. Can you tell me a little bit more about SilverCloud, please?
Yeah, certainly happy to. Thank you for the opportunity. SilverCloud is a digital mental health platform, so it enables a user to be able to access in an earlier, easier way programs, support, content around challenges right the way across the kind of spectrum of care, from your kind of more traditional, mild or moderate conditions or disorders, all the way through into full interventional programs around depression and anxiety. So digital platform, digital delivery, greater increase in terms of access and scale, and focused on improving outcomes, so making people's lives better.
Fantastic. And Chris, you joined us today from the Microsoft Research Lab. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the kind of work that goes on there?
Sure. So our research lab up in Cambridge is our European research lab for Microsoft. We have a couple of hundred scientists and engineers. We work on a fairly broad range of topics, things like new kinds of hardware for cloud computing for our data centers, security and privacy, a lot of work, of course, on AI, and increasingly we do a lot of work on the application of AI in healthcare and in life sciences.
Fantastic, thank you.
And Ken, how would you illustrate the importance of mental health in today's world?
Somebody explained it to me before, and kind of saying, the reason that we're all here is mental health. Mental health is the kind of single biggest impacting factor on what we do and how we interact. It's the reason that we wake up in the morning, hold down a job, are members of society. It kind of impacts every facet and part of our lives in terms of our families and our communities and our workplaces. So it really is kind of, for me, you can impact somebody's life more through mental health than you can through 1,000 different sensors or pieces of technology. So it's really the vital part of I suppose, us and where we go.
Of everything, yeah.
Fantastic. And Chris, from your perspective, in terms of the impact between technology and mental health, what does that look like from your role within Microsoft Research?
Right, I think this is just a super interesting time for technology. We're seeing this tremendous revolution take place now. It's sort of called the AI revolution, but I think of it rather differently. I think of it really as a revolution in how we create technology. We used to sort of program computers step by step to tell them how to solve the problem. What we're seeing now is a very, very different approach. We do something radically different. Instead, we program the computer to learn, and then we teach it using large quantities of data. And so this is going to be, I think, transformational in many, many areas, not least being healthcare and life sciences, including mental health. And I think when we have the opportunity to bring large amounts of data together with this new AI or so-called machine learning technology, then I think this is a sort of pivotal moment, and that's why this collaboration with SilverCloud is just so exciting and so very timely, I think.
Fantastic, yeah. Sounds brilliant. And just, I guess, a little bit more, around some of that data you referenced, and I guess the kind of challenges around data and good data has been an important part of what we discussed today. What have you seen from the Microsoft Research Lab about how we balance that sort of combination of getting it right, I guess, to get the best solution?
Absolutely, yes. So it's a very powerful and very generic technology. It's very much data-driven. So there's tremendous opportunity, but there are risks and there are pitfalls, and there are things we have to be very careful of. For example, when we gather data from the real world, often that data comes from people, and people naturally have biases and prejudices and things that we perhaps don't want to amplify. And of course, the power of this technology is such that it could take those biases and amplify them in a way that would be very undesirable. But equally, the technology brings the opportunity to detect the biases and even remove the biases. So we could end up with technologies that are very powerful and perhaps less prone or even free from these biases. So it can go either way, and I think we have to be very thoughtful about how we create the technology, how we deploy the technology, and even when or whether we deploy the technology. Just because something can be done doesn't mean it should be done.
Absolutely.
And so we have to really think about how to approach this in a way that's very ethical, that's really founded on trust, and make sure the technology lands well and brings all the benefits that we believe that it can bring.
And we've heard a lot over the last day and a half about how the role of AI and the benefits and the changing processes and people will work together. So can you talk a little bit about how this will work with clinicians and the benefits that it will bring to them and how they will work with the technology?
So if we look at mental health in terms of the size and challenge that's there, I think most people would broadly accept it's one of the greatest social and economic challenges of our today. It's kind of eclipsed everything else in terms of mortality at this stage, and is becoming increasing in terms of the size of challenges there. There is simply no way of being able to deliver access to mental health, quality access to mental health care, unless you heavily leverage technology. Our approach at SilverCloud is to leverage that technology to extend the clinician's reach. Improve access, improve scale, and improve outcomes is the kind of core three. Without that technology, and with having that sort of approach, you're going to miss out on being able to provide. So in the US, for example, about 44% of all therapists will retire in the next 4 years. Wow. So the challenge we have today is just getting larger and larger and larger. So what we've developed in SilverCloud's, from well over a decade of research into the space, you can deliver an environment which is supportive, which is engaging, which achieves those outcomes. But we want to always keep that human in the loop, that clinician, that therapist, that supporter who's there to help guide you through. As I say, really be a clinician extender, not a clinician replacer. And I think that's the beauty of technology that we can deploy.
Fantastic. And Chris, when we think about the person at the centre of all of this, which is the patient, the client, the customer, whoever you want to call it, that's, I suppose, receiving that care, you touched a little bit on AI. How do we really apply AI to think about providing that service personalisation or automated problem recognition? And maybe some use case examples would be fab from you.
Yes, I think actually there are many, many things that we could consider, and we've already started brainstorming the many, many ways in which this could apply. I think one of the real promises of this technology is the idea of personalisation. So instead of having to deliver one-size-fits-all healthcare, we can personalise the interventions, in the case of SilverCloud, to you as a specific individual. Now there's a very interesting idea here. I call it the paradox of personalization. It's a concept from machine learning, which is the idea that to deliver something that's very specific to you as an individual, I could collect lots of information and data from you as an individual, but it would take an enormous amount of data before we really started to understand you specifically. But instead, if we take data from a very large cohort of people, we can then use machine learning to recognize patterns. For example, subgroups of people that, broadly speaking, respond in a similar way, and even subgroups within the subgroups, right down to you as an individual. And so this paradox of personalization is that the way to deliver personalized healthcare is actually to look at the data from very large cohorts. And I think this is one of the really exciting opportunities that we have with this research collaboration with SilverCloud.
Brilliant. I think we're going to talk a little bit about the partnership, weren't we, as well?
Yes. So can you talk a little bit about the partnership that you've enjoyed so far between SilverCloud and Microsoft Research?
I think it's early days, but what we certainly see is a very clear synergy. I think there's a strong resonance between our two organizations. We're both very research focused. We both believe strongly in the power of evidence and objectivity. We believe strongly in the power of data. So this is just a very natural, I think, coming together of these two organizations. I think it's a very exciting time for both of us.
Yeah, I know as an employee at Microsoft, we're all keen to see more and more applications of tech for good, and mental health is extremely important, isn't it?
Absolutely.
To us as an employee base, it's something that we're looking more around with accessibility and our diversity and inclusion networks. So it's, as you say, it's a really important topic of conversation at the moment. So if I may, if people want to find out more about the services from SilverCloud, where can they go? Where should they look?
Yeah, certainly. SilverCloud's available throughout the NHS. It's also available throughout US and Canada through a number of kind of major insurers, healthcare providers, and indeed kind of large corporate employers. So typically what they can do is reach out through that or through the SilverCloud website at silvercloudhealth.com.
Fantastic. Well, look, all the very best for the future of the partnership together. Look forward to hearing more about the outcomes from it. And thank you very much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.